People here at the Spiritualist Church believe that there is no death, that life continues. We're in this world now and we will go home to the spirit world. Mediums work in all different ways. They're either clairvoyant, they see something clearly, or they're clairaudience, they hear people speaking to them, or what we call clairsentient, where some information comes into their head and they just know that it's right and it's about a certain person. It is a gift.
Hi, and welcome to The Seeker
and The Skeptic.
I'm Kat, and I'm the flaky, unpredictable, irrational seeker.
And I'm Rebecca. I'll be your sarcastic, grumpy, close-minded, skeptical host. Or maybe we should just be ourselves.
Sounds good to me. This podcast is going to dive deep into controversial topics that some may call new age or woo-woo, or just plain foolish.
And look at them with a skeptical but open-minded approach that will hopefully encourage understanding and acceptance from both the skeptics
and the seekers. This episode, we're talking to the dead. Or at least watching Jackie talk to the dead.
Yeah, I thought the only dead person you could talk to in church was Jesus. But in Spiritualist Church, they talk to any old ghost, not just the holy one.
Yeah, as a seeker, when we decided to go to the Spiritualist Church in Brighton, I guess I didn't really know what to expect. As a church, I kind of thought of my own upbringing, going to church, a Catholic church. But at the same time, I also knew that if it had anything to do with spiritualist stuff, I would be in for a treat. And also from watching mediumship stuff on TV, seeing the odd medium, seeing them getting debunked, I didn't really have that much faith in our medium.
You didn't have high hopes?
Not really. What about you?
I was really apprehensive about going into a church full stop. Like, I haven't been into a church for I don't know how long. In fact, I almost went to midnight mass because beautiful candles and everything, and I wanted to experience it. And I sort of got to the threshold, and like a vampire, I was like, no, I seriously, what came into my head was all my gay friends and how the Catholic Church has, because I have friends who grew up Catholic who are now gay, who have had this horrible experience, so I just couldn't go in there. So my association with church is this whole like complicated, I guess kind of slightly politicized relationship where I feel like they're bad places full of bad
it makes
shit.
sense. It's like we wouldn't maybe by choice walk into like a Nazi
exactly
federation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the association in my mind because I didn't grow up religious of any kind. The only thing I know about church is that's the place that was mean to my friends.
Yeah.
So that, and also there's this really, really strong hatred, and probably more than anything, hatred is the right word, of mediums in the skeptic community.
Okay.
We really don't like them. We call them grief vampires.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's not
Else?
just like one of those things that like we're like, no, we don't really believe in it, and other people carry on, do their own thing. Like, skeptics are very angry about mediums and people who claim they can talk to the dead. In fact, in thinking about this, and we'll probably get into this later, I started to analyse why skeptics hate mediums so much. It's a really interesting question. So I was going in there with those two things in my head. Mediums are the worst, and churches are a place of being nasty to gay people. So I didn't have high hopes. We did have a lovely meal beforehand,
so
and a glass of wine,
which helps.
So yeah.
So the venue itself, that's pretty special, right?
It's beautiful. It's amazing. I think you'd describe it as like, it's like poured concrete.
Yeah, and it's almost like if you had corrugated card and you like bent it into an S shape.
Yeah, it's all curved and huge, absolutely huge. In fact, I went on the Google reviews for that building. I'll just treat you to a review from Laura King. She says, "Great people, shame about the building. I've been here a few times now, but find myself repulsed by the brutalist architecture, which looks like a crematorium from the outside. Certainly the ugliest looking spiritualist church I have ever seen, and completely wrong in style for Brighton. What were they thinking to commission this? But once I took a deep breath and forced myself to go in, the people are lovely, and the mediumship is of a good standard."
Oh, interesting. I'd love to get in touch with this person because clearly they are experienced in going to spiritualist churches.
Yeah, but I love it. I actually really like
Yeah.
that type of architecture. I didn't know it was called brutalist architecture, but
Yeah.
that style I really like.
No, and you see it in the South Bank and stuff like that, right?
Yes, exactly. The South Bank. That's what popped into my mind. Is that big, blocky, concrete. I know it's great when the light hits it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know, I love it. So that made me feel a bit better.
I was actually quite interested by the inside because I was thinking it would follow that kind of unconventional Helvetica style. But actually on the inside, it made me feel much more at home in the sense that it was much more like a Catholic church that I'd been to.
Oh, really?
You know, it had like a classic churchy vibe.
But the room we went into was round, wasn't it?
It was
circular,
round, but you know,
which is
that's
unusual.
I would say it's not unusual for a chapel to look like that.
Really?
Yeah, so it wasn't like walking into a church hall. I guess what would you even call a church hall? But the main room of a church, which is very, very big and grand usually. It was more like, walking into a small chapel. I guess it sat 30 of us.
Yeah, I think there was about 30 to 40 people there.
Yeah.
When we came in around the back. I'm not sure if we came in the right way, but there was a bunch of people smoking, sitting on low walls, around the car park, around the back entrance, around the fire doors. And to me, I thought, oh, there must be some kind of AA meeting happening in this building.
Not
at the
to say
same
anything
time.
about those people, but basically
that was the
where
vibe they were giving off.
Yeah.
Like, I've been to AA meetings, I've been around people in AA, and it's an organization which works for a lot of people, apparently. Maybe we should do another episode about that. But that's the kind of vibe that, because they were smoking, and AA people love to smoke, and they're all sitting on their little low walls, and they all looked a bit not particularly happy with their life circumstances,
right? Or welcoming to us. Like I think our entrance felt, like we're going to something maybe even a bit seedy.
Yeah,
that's how I felt.
But I assumed that they were there for something else.
Yeah,
I thought they must be there for, because it's a huge building.
Yeah,
I thought, well, there must be like an addicts meeting going on at the same time. But no, they were actually part of the congregation.
Yeah, mustn't judge the audience of a medium, I guess.
Exactly.
That's definitely something I learned from going in. So we were asked to pay £3 at the door.
Yeah, that seems quite reasonable. Although I was expecting it to be free, to be honest. I didn't bring any money. You had to pay for me.
Oh, interesting.
That's why I didn't have any cash. I just we're going to church. They don't ask you to pay for church, do they?
Well, I kind of thought of it as this was an event. So yeah, but definitely, like, to me, £3 to see a medium is quite a good deal.
Yeah, I wasn't resentful at all. There are mediums who charge a lot more. I was just surprised.
Yeah.
So it's lucky you had £6 because I had nothing.
But also, I judge places a lot by how welcoming an entrance is, and I thought that they were very nice.
Yeah, they seemed lovely. The woman who welcomed us was like, I guess she was probably in her 50s, maybe late 50s. Just lovely, very small lady, very pleased to see us, big smile, come sit down here. But what I thought was weird was that she didn't really do anything. Like, she didn't give us a prayer or a song or anything. She was just like, this is our medium for tonight, and here's Jackie, and that's it.
Yeah, it was stripped of ceremony.
Yes.
There was none of that. We'll talk through it, but I mean, one thing I think was said was sit anywhere. There are no designated seats for anything, and again, I really like that, because in church you feel like, well, everyone has their place, which isn't even true, but it feels like that.
Yeah.
So I like that. And yeah, we sat down, and I think you were I remember you looking around being like, this is an interesting space.
Yeah.
And I think I was looking at the walls, but were there pictures of, like, saints?
I don't think so. I don't think there was much decoration at all. It would be hard to put up, once you've got a round room.
Yeah, it
makes it hard to hang anything on the walls.
There were definitely pictures. I just don't know what they were of.
Maybe there were posters or something.
I feel like it was a bit more like a framed picture of it looked like religious art.
Oh, could well be.
But at the same time, I was not wearing my contacts, so I can't really. But it was that style.
I was looking around checking out the people. Yes. That was my focus. So, I was really interested to see who turned up.
And how would you summarise?
Well, we had those people from the car park,
yes.
the AA people.
So we were wrong. They were, and they sat in the front row.
Yes.
We were in the second row, I think.
Yeah, and one of them was coughing and gobbling up throat sweets throughout. She was obviously not in a completely healthy state.
Yeah, there was a lot of coughing actually in the whole place.
And then there was the youngest person was a teenager, I think, who had obviously been brought along by a mother.
But there were two kids.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. So but I think they hadn't come of their own steam.
No,
there would be an odd choice for a teenager to be like,
there was a lot of
Dad,
like,
I'm off to the Spiritualist Church.
Yeah, there were a lot of like side looks to the mother.
I was expecting everyone to be old. That was my expectation, because I thought, who wants to get in contact with the dead?
People who know a lot of dead people.
Exactly. Who knows a lot of dead people? Old people. But it wasn't. It was a real mix.
Yeah. And like to the left of me, there were two men, sort of, like middle-aged. To the right of you, I think there was a younger guy. The guy who... Yeah.
And there was some people of colour there, which is really unusual for Brighton, because we live in a very white town.
Right. And I don't normally associate people of colour going to these events. Yeah. Which, I mean, is that a problem? I don't know. I just think it's taste, right? Yeah. And culture. So,
although weirdly, I think that's different in America.
Okay.
I did a bit of digging into Spiritualist Church, and I think maybe they have more mixed demographics in their sermons, but yeah.
And then it is Brighton, like we said.
So Jackie comes out. Jackie is our medium for the evening. What was your first impression of her?
What a lovely, motherly, like sweet woman. I like this lady. And definitely when she started speaking, I think the first thing she said was, I'm so nervous, and which I always love, because I know how hard it is to speak in front of people. And I was kind of surprised, because I thought, a medium is like used to doing that, and maybe a little bit cocky.
Yeah. Yeah, at least confident. If I could talk to the dead, I'd be pretty confident about the world.
Yes. But no, she had a good amount of like humility, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess she was middle-aged, wearing a floral dress, high heels, which was a bad choice because she clearly couldn't stand very well in them. She didn't enjoy
the standing.
Yeah.
And maybe heavy set. Is that like a polite thing to say? Probably not.
It's probably not a polite thing to say, but yeah.
But in context, it will make sense when we talk a bit more about what she was tuning into. And she was introduced by a woman who kind of sat at the front the whole time, who I kind of stopped noticing after a while.
Yeah, she sort of disappeared into the background.
Yeah. All eyes were on Jackie.
So the actual readings, the first reading she did... The first reading that she did was for someone sitting right near the back who did not know any details about their dead loved one.
It was strange. I mean, the way Jackie kind of prepared us by saying something like, she said something like, can you accept this? That would be
she
a
kept
question.
saying that. Can you accept this? And what was the other? Who can take that?
Who can take that? Yeah.
It was like she was auctioning her statements out to us.
Completely. That's it. And I guess that's like a technique, but I personally hadn't heard that before.
I never heard it before.
I quite liked it. It really felt like she was deliberately trying not to force anything.
Yeah.
So really carefully chosen words. But with that one, I think she started with maybe a letter or a name.
Yeah, I think she started with a B. She was like, I sense a B name. Can anyone take that? Can anyone accept that?
And it wasn't like 10 hands went up.
No.
It was kind of like a reluctant, like maybe that's... Anyway, the idea was that this was going to be an older woman, probably the girl's grandma. I think it was worked out. But
and she said the B name, and she was like, "Oh yeah, maybe it's my grandma." And she was like, "Okay, I sense that she really liked something. I can't remember what the thing was. She really liked she liked floral fabrics,
and I definitely she liked a tipple.
Yes,
which was a common theme,
reoccurring theme.
Basically, the dead all like to drink. I mean, I wonder how all of these people died, but I wonder if alcoholism.
Yeah,
because
perhaps.
Of the commonality in them.
Well, she just kept listing things, not actually that many things, because she would reiterate.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, there's a B name. Oh, it's your grandma, is it? She liked floral fabrics. And this woman would just be like, no, I don't know, maybe. And she's like, oh, I'll ask your mum. Yeah. And there was always, I mean, you could look at that as a skeptic and say, well, she's just saying random shit. But also... the problem was the woman didn't know. She couldn't verify or unverify this stuff.
Yeah, so I was like, Jackie seemed confident in what she was kind of getting. And it was interesting to kind of hear her process. So the thing about people liking a tipple was that she felt like quite flushed and kept kind of staggering. And she was like, oh, this is unusual. I'm normally dead cold, but I'm really warm and I'm kind of like stumbling a bit. So it was interesting that a lot of the things that Jackie was just noticing about herself, she would ascribe to the spirit.
Yeah, although for context, it was a warm room. And as I said before, she was wearing inappropriate shoes.
It was literally boiling. And yeah, and the shoes, I really wanted a drink, like of water. And she was like, oh, it's so strange. I'm reaching for a glass of water. Anyway.
I thought what's going on in her head there? Does she not, has she never worn these shoes before? Does she really think that she's unsteady in her feet because of ghosts?
Right.
Or has she not noticed that when she walked down here to the service that she was also unsteady?
Yeah.
And if so, did she think there were ghosts on the way, drunk ghosts on the way? Is she just plagued by drunk ghosts every time she puts these shoes on? She's like, oh God, those drunk ghosts again. It's like, no, it's just the shoes. They don't fit.
That's not the connection. Yeah. It was interesting to kind of see the connections. So one of the ones about the being thirsty, her wanting some water, was, I think the spirit was diabetic.
Yes.
Like, which makes me think she does believe this, because if I was doing this myself, I would be paying attention to how I feel and forming connections as best I could. Anyway, so
another point in favour of her believing it is that it was only £3. And this is a general rule. The more someone charges for talking to the dead or telling your future, I mean, it's a general rule. There are exceptions, but the more they charge, the more likely they are to be faking it, in my experience.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's like a whole conversation we can maybe talk about
in
a bit.
I'm just throwing that out there. I don't really have much evidence to support it apart from a general feeling I have. And also, like, when the skeptic community have looked into these people who say that they can do psychic stuff, the more they charge, the more likely you find there's something dodgy going on in the background.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to have the money conversation about this.
So after that first reading, she got better. She got more people who knew more about their dead relatives.
Right. So the second one was ludicrous. Like, this is the point where I was convinced in Jackie's powers, because I think it was the coughing woman who took what she was saying, and there were just so many very convincing things in common.
Can you remember where it started?
Definitely with the name. Oh no, with the trains.
Yeah, I think it started with the train. I think she said, I sense someone who worked on the trains or had something to do with the trains.
And it did take a while for anyone to kind of own up to that. And then there were two women kind of like vying for it.
But the weird thing was, there were two women and they were together, or at least they were sitting next to each other, and they were sitting next to each other out in the car park as well beforehand. And they both had relatives who worked kind of on the trains. One of them had a relative who took them on the Bluebell Railway, which is like, I guess, a scenic railway. I don't know anything about it. But yeah, so it's local. And the other one had a relative who worked in factories, which were very warm and therefore would get very hot, like you would on a train, and would get like
sooty face,
because that's one of the things Jackie said. Oh, it might not be working on a train. It might just be somewhere where you get like your black on your face. And she was like, oh, that must be my granddad. So these two people were both feeling what she was saying.
Yeah.
Which suggests to me that what she's saying is actually quite vague and can be interpreted in multiple ways.
For sure. And it's really interesting, this thing about the kinds of thing that Jackie was talking about throughout, like the common things like flowers being something, alcoholism, jewelry, occupations. They are quite general, and people of a certain age will have these things in common, because say their parents or grandparents, they weren't social media consultants. You know, they had a certain kind of career, and it was probably quite limited. Their lives were maybe less diverse than they are now. So Jackie, I mean, mediums maybe at the moment are probably having a fairly easy time of it if they're talking about people from a certain generation.
I was thinking that. I walked past a flower shop the other day, and I remember one of the things after we walked out, you were like, it was amazing that she managed to guess this woman's grandmother's favourite flower. I was like, yeah, that is a bit of a shot in the dark. I wonder how she did that. But then I think about like the flower selection. When I walk past the florist today, I see like a choice of like 50 different flowers or something ridiculous. When my grandma walked past her local florist, how many different flowers do you think were available? Also,
I feel like I would maybe be able to say my mum's favourite or least favourite flower, but I couldn't name any of my friends. I couldn't like.
You don't know mine?
Like,
should we
trade favourite flowers?
Yeah, go on. Just in case either of us die in the near future.
Boring. Mine's rose. Like
rose. What colour?
Red.
Red. Oh God, that's so general.
It's so general.
How will I tell if the medium's really talking to you, or if she's just
perfect for mediums?
I don't know what my favourite flower is. I've got myself into a situation now, haven't I? I really like bluebells and stuff that comes up.
I do like a bluebell.
Seasoning, and that's one of the things. No, it wasn't. But guessing flowers, she could guess daffodils, I think, for someone.
Was good, yeah.
Guessing stuff that is native to our country and that comes up in people's gardens. Also, I've noticed this, anecdotal, but completely true. Old people love gardening.
They do.
And you know what dead people are before they die, usually? Old. So guessing that old people like dead people like flowers is quite a...
It's a pretty good one.
But what was so convincing about this particular engagement about the man who possibly worked on the railways or maybe in a factory, because that's the one that really did it for you.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, well, you're asking.
Yeah.
Well, so I can't actually remember, but I feel like it was multiple things, which I wish I could remember.
No, I think the fact that you don't remember is interesting, because I jotted down a few notes straight afterwards.
Yeah.
And what I was surprised by is we were in there for an hour.
Yeah.
And the amount of things I wrote down was very small.
Yeah.
And I think what she does, I'm not saying intentionally, but what she does is she spends a lot of time padding.
Yeah. Oh God, there was a lot of padding, and there's a lot of throwing stuff out. And of course, we know about the cognitive biases. We're gonna, especially me, I'm gonna cling on to the things that hit, that surprised me.
It's also such a different experience for us sitting in the audience, and me being pretty sure that I'm not going to speak up and go, hey, that's me, and probably you feeling the same. So we hear these vague things that seems like, oh, you have a piece of jewelry and it's connected to your grandma. But in the person's mind who's responding to that, they're like, oh my God, she knew about this specific locket.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there was a locket one. But there was one time where I thought I could have put my hand up. So I think the original cues were something like something to do with Italy and feasts. And I was like, oh yeah, my parents' Italian friends who died like, I don't know, 10 years ago. We went to Italy as a family when I was very young. So I thought, okay, maybe her. And then she started coming up with letters. And the first one was A. And I was like, oh yeah, her name was Angela. And then she was like, or N. And I was like, Angela. So at that point I was a bit like, I should put my hand up.
Oh, you should have pushed that other woman out of the way. So no, it's me.
Right.
It's me.
The only thing is, similar to that young girl, I don't know much about Angela. Like that's where it would have ended. So it's a very strange thing. I think when you're rooting for the medium and you're rooting to have some kind of connection with a dead loved one, your mind is going to start doing that stuff. Yeah,
and there's a lot of very powerful there's a wish for it to be true that's almost overwhelming. Like, you really want to speak to this. The Italian feast made me think, because we'd literally just come from a restaurant and had this massive pizza. And then here we are. And she's like, does she smell it on me?
Did somebody? Yeah, right. She's just like wanting pizza, basically. That's mean. So afterwards.
Oh, there was one more that I thought was interesting, which was she was like touting around these shoes. She kept coming back to it throughout the course of the evening. She was like, there's something about shoes.
And the thing about, like, she kept looking at somebody's shoes.
Yeah, and she kept looking at, so I don't know why I'm looking at this person's shoes, but does shoes mean anything to anyone? And then someone eventually said, oh no, no one was picking up on shoes. And she said, oh, it could just be symbolic. It could be like the red shoes in Wizard of Oz. And someone's hand shot up and they're like, oh my God, I used to watch the Wizard of Oz with my grandma.
Wow.
And it was a really special movie to her. And then she took that and said, oh yes, your grandma is here and she has a message for you. And like everyone else, her message was she wants to uplift you.
Yeah, there was always a really nice message, very comforting.
But in those specific terms, uplift, which then researching the Spiritualist Church, that is the language they always use.
Oh, interesting.
Spirits always want to uplift us.
Oh.
Yeah, it's nice.
And she did a lot of like blowing kisses and stuff like that. It was just, I mean, that's all very pleasant.
And that was all the general advice that the spirits had for us.
Yeah.
Basically that we should keep
doing what you're doing.
Keep doing what you're doing. Maybe don't worry so much.
Yeah.
And know that we're here. And it might have been, I think it was at the end, the lady who welcomed us at the beginning said, and what a lovely evening we've had. And it's so nice to have evidence that we survived this life. That was the close. And that is basically, that's why they do what they do. That's the spiritualist thing. That's why they do mediumship. It's not really to be entertained by tidbits about shoes.
Yeah.
It's to prove the continuous existence of the soul.
Yes. Which is arguably harmless.
Well, yeah, we can get into that.
We'll get to that.
But you left is that
oh
like,
my God, I loved it. I thought it was I thought it was I wouldn't say that it was hopeful for me in particular, but I just came away with like a general positive feeling about it, because I thought Jackie was nice and gave nice messages, and probably a lot of people who went left feeling pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, we were standing there at the bus, waiting for the bus, going in different directions, and you said to me, I believe in this. This is this is what you said on the night.
Okay.
What were your feelings right then?
I was surprised at how convincing Jackie was. Yeah. And because it's such a good feeling when you hear something click, it just naturally seems nice. But again, there's already like this image of, wouldn't it be nice if there were a way for loved ones to contact you afterwards? It's not something that scares me. Because I think at one point in my life, I definitely would have been more creeped out by that possibility.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm just like, that's kind of a nice idea if that was the case.
Can you like put yourself back in your own head that evening? And when you say, I'm convinced, or like you said that you didn't say I'm convinced, you said like I'm 90%, or like I'm really into it. You said you're going to have to talk me off the ledge on this one.
Yeah. I mean, that's partly to kind of annoy you, but also from that experience, I wouldn't have had a reason not to believe.
Okay.
Yeah, like it was from that alone, it would be all the evidence I would need in that moment. But obviously, across time, I can think about it a bit more and be like, yeah, I can see how that's not proving anything.
It's almost like how when you watch a movie and you're like, wow, that was amazing, and then you think about it, and a couple of hours later you're like, wait a minute, why did that character do that? Like, what they call it, refrigerator logic, right? You go, you've finished watching the movie, you go to the fridge, you open it, and you stare into the fridge thinking, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, why did he do that? He didn't even know that, but like...
I'd also compare it to watching a scary film late at night and going to your room being like, I'll never be able to sleep in the dark again. I'm incredibly scared, and I'm scared about this house. And then the next day you're not feeling that.
Yeah.
So I think there was a lot of that going on.
It's weird how where you are and how close in time the event was changes how you feel about it. Yeah,
for sure. And me as a person, I guess I'm on the fence with all of this stuff. So, like I said, you had to talk me off the ledge, which you have done. It's fine.
What, already? Oh, well, let's finish the podcast now. Done. Problem solved.
My research actually hasn't helped matters, let's say.
So I looked into the Spiritualist Church because I don't really know anything about them at all. I thought maybe they were linked to the Christian Scientists. That was kind of the connection in my mind, because they're both kind of new churches that tend to be about, in these modern buildings doing their thing. They're not linked at all. I don't know why I came up with that idea. So from my reading and research, I have come to find very little about the Spiritualist Church. It's actually a kind of... they don't see, even on their website. So I went to the website of the Spiritualist National Union, which is the body that oversees the church that we went to. And they have so little information about what they believe on there. It's ridiculous. Like, if I wanted to get into this religion, I'd have basically nothing to cling on to, which is maybe why they want you to come in there in person and experience it. But from what I understand, they are Christians who have a focus on spiritualism, not just spiritualism as in talking to the dead, but just generally this more like emotional, vibey energy, all that sort of thing. Like, they're Christians plus a bit of a hippie. They're like, if you imagine a Venn diagram of Christians, Protestants, and hippies, they're in that overlapping thing. And that's kind of where they come from. So there was this period in American history. It's referred to as the Second Great Awakening. It's like 1790-ish it kicks off, and it's basically when a lot of Protestants get a bit bored of Protestantism and they start getting into the supernatural. So like, Protestantism, there's too much logic in it, it's so boring, and there's no decorations in the building, and there's no singing, and maybe they will sing, I don't know, but anyway, they're feeling like this religion isn't enough for them. They want something a bit special, they want something a bit magical.
They miss Catholicism, basically, the magic and the mystery of that. Yep.
So basically they start bringing in those elements and create several new religions. This is where the Quakers come. No, maybe not the Quakers, but some of those groups, that we think of as the more hippy-dippy versions of Christianity. This is where their genesis is in America in this time. And there's also, at the same time, there's lots of stuff going on politically, like women's suffrage and stuff. This stretches over a couple of hundred years, but it kicks off in 1790 and then goes for a little while. So they want a religion that is not only more fun than one they had previously, they want one that takes account of their personal experience and emotions. They don't just want to refer to an old book in a language they don't understand. They want a bit more. And they also want it to be politically relevant. So they want to be able to say, I believe women should vote because of my religion. Like, these two things are connected, intertwined, and they sort of create this whole worldview around it. But what really kicks off specifically Spiritualist Church, like the one that we went to, is the Fox Sisters.
Yes.
So did you come across these guys in your research too?
I did indeed. And it was interesting kind of reading the story because, so you've got these two young girls who basically came up with an elaborate system of like rapping. I don't know if you can hear this, but I imagine it stuff like that. And they would kind of communicate with the dead.
With Mr. Splitfoot.
Yes. And basically, it didn't take long they became a bit of a success.
It was called Rappermania.
Wow.
That's how famous they became.
Before they were actual like rappers as we know them now.
They had two, so there's the two sisters, and they have an older sister who's like quite a lot older. She's like in her 20s, and they're in their early teens.
Yeah.
And she scoops them up and takes them out on stage and makes them into a thing, and suddenly they're filling auditoriums. It's just these two teenage girls, I think 12 and 15, somewhere around there. And they're up on stage in front of thousands of people, because obviously if you claim you can talk to the dead, that's exciting.
And like you said, people were kind of looking for something like this around.
Well, you think this is just a time during the Civil War, just after the Civil War, this is happening. So everyone has a dead relative who died young, who they didn't get to finish saying what they needed to say. Like this is the perfect time for this to emerge. And these girls are coming from a fairly poor background, just out of nowhere, basically. And they've been plucked out. And I think there's something that sort of makes them seem more authentic to the public, because they're innocent.
Yeah.
Like they're just these poor girls who came out of nowhere.
And you trust kids, right?
Yeah. Yes. For some reason, people trust kids.
And the story then it goes kind of downhill. One of them did kind of come out and confessed that they were faking it. But that didn't stop, I think, both of them from kind of getting into alcohol.
Yeah.
They were living the party lifestyle.
Yeah, they're child stars, right?
Yeah.
The same thing that happens to all child stars. They get exploited. People are trying to make money off them. Actually, both of them came out and admitted. They wrote a book together.
Oh, really?
I can't remember what it was called. It had a really dramatic title. It's something like The Death Blow to Spiritualism.
Oh, wow.
It's on Gutenberg Press, so you can read it. I'll put it in the show notes, the whole book. But that was written together. One of them came out on stage and did an actual performance and said, okay, guys, this is I faked it. We faked it. And this is how we did it. Wow. And she demonstrated. So that she said at the start they used all sorts of things. So they used like an apple tied to a bit of string.
Yeah.
But then they developed this system of making their knuckles and their toes crack. But really loudly. And they practiced that for ages, and she got up on stage and took her shoes off and did it for everyone.
Wow.
And then they co-authored a book which is more like a pamphlet, but this book, The Death Blow to Spiritualism, which said, look, this is not true, and we don't want. They were specifically really angry about the fact that this was starting a religion,
right?
Because their older sister wanted to start a religion, and she was taking them and sort of using them to create what we now know as spiritualism. So it's kind of ironic that the book was called The Death Blow to Spiritualism, and then God knows how many years later, here we are going to the Spiritualist Church.
Well, that's the thing, and even now, many accounts of the Fox sisters leave out the confession altogether. That they're still
cited as evidence for, and so. Margaret, who I think was the older one, I could be wrong, did recant her confession a year afterwards. Because, well, I mean, who knows? But my theory would be because she realised she had no other way of making a living.
Yeah.
And all three of them, the older sister too, died really young. They died in their 50s.
Yeah.
Just, they did not have a good lifestyle. Yeah.
Sad.
Really sad. So then the religion sort of develops. And from what I could ascertain from the very sparse Spiritualist National Union website, their main thing is these 7 principles, which are, number 1, the fatherhood of God. So that's basically that there's a creative universe, a creative force that made the universe out of itself, that they refer to the fatherhood of God. 2, the brotherhood of man, which is we're all connected and therefore should be nice to each other. Sounds pretty good. 3, the communion of spirits and the ministry of angels. That's we can talk to the dead. 4, the continuous existence of the soul. So we're immortal, like our physical bodies dies, but we go on forever. 5, personal responsibility, because we have free will. And that's a whole different episode. Probably won't get into that right now, because it won't surprise Kat to hear, because she hears ad nauseum constantly from me that I'm a bit skeptical of free will. But anyway, they believe in it. Number 6, compensation and retribution hereafter for all the good and evil deeds done on earth.
That's like karma.
Yeah, but only in mortal life. It doesn't go past. So everything within your life, everything will be squared away.
Oh, nice. That's more like the Catholics. Yeah, you just have to say sorry at the end. But
oh no, I think I don't know, what I understood is it's something like when you die, it will be an even tab. So
yeah, it all gets erased, like reset.
Yeah, but it will be reset. So like if I do something nasty to you today, then tomorrow someone will be nasty to me.
Yeah,
like it's really like immediate action.
Yeah.
And then 7 is eternal progress open to every soul, which is basically this idea. It's really interesting because they had this kind of dialogue with the theory of evolution when that came along. And some of them were like, no, we don't believe in it. That doesn't make sense to us. But this particular group that the Spiritualist National Union are associated with believe basically that evolution happens to every individual soul. So you start off, obviously you start
like
off,
level 1.
yeah. And then after you die, you carry on progressing up the levels.
Cool.
And that's why they talk to the dead. One of the reasons they talk to the dead is because the dead know more, because they're more developed necessarily. They also think that it's like your evolution gets supercharged once you die.
Oh, wow.
So you're not still creeping along with your spiritual progression like we are now, but it's really intensified.
Okay.
Oh, and they do healing. That's not one of their principles, but that's another thing they do, spiritual healing, which is really interesting to me because my dad was briefly married to a woman who did spiritual healing, and I had no idea it was maybe her particular type wasn't associated with the Spiritualist Church.
Well, no, I mean, I'd say like energy healing, like Reiki and stuff is different.
But she never called it Reiki. She always called it spiritual healing.
Oh, interesting.
But then I was never taken to a church or anything. It's like you just hover your hands like a couple of inches over the person's body and focus the energies. Anyway, that's another big thing that they do. But it seems like the biggest deal to them is we live forever.
Yeah.
And we prove this, the survival evidence, that's what they refer to it as, by talking to the dead.
Yeah.
And that's why we were there. That's why they do the mediumship. It's not for fun. It's specifically to prove this point of their doctrine.
Yeah. It's pretty specific.
Yeah.
So this kind of like opens up basically an excuse for me to look up mediumship. And from what I gather, you can get messages from the dead in different ways. So you might have heard of the Claires.
What?
Who? Clairsentience. So that is, can you guess what that is?
Oh, it's when it comes in thoughts?
Yes. Like knowledge, yeah.
Oh, this is a fun game. Give me another
And
one.
then clairvoyance.
That's seeing.
Clairaudience.
Hearing.
I've forgotten the other ones,
Oh.
but I think there are 5 Claires, let's say. And I think you can have a mixture of them. Okay, so I don't know what Jackie would have had, but she got a lot of feelings.
She did get a lot of feelings.
I think that's one as well. Claire what the heck would that
feeling.
be? God damn, I should have known that. Anyway, and then you've got the kind of mediums who will, I'm picturing them in more of a seance. So they might conduct the spirit in a way that makes objects fly around, tables lift off the ground.
That's like a manifestation.
Yeah, and that is believed by mediums still. But
would the Fox sisters be counted as that?
I would have thought way more
they're
so,
making physical matter,
without a doubt. Yeah, and as far as we know, they weren't. They were kind of asking questions to the dead, but they weren't necessarily like channeling them, like saying words.
That's true. So they'd ask a question like, "Are you here with us?"
Like
and they
yes
get
or no
rap
questions.
in reply. So that's because I guess it's making. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter what kind of Claire they were.
And so then I found out a bit more about where did it all start, and honestly, it's you could say that the Fox sisters really kicked it off in some ways.
Wow.
But really, ancient civilizations had mediums to advise rulers. Many religions do have ancestor worship. So it's not like this is a new idea in humans. I think we've been kind of craving this idea of contacting the dead for a long time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But what I was interested in was, who's out there today and who are people following in the mediumship world? And there are lots of different kind of takes on this. So some people are channeling spirits from like other dimensions.
Wow.
Others,
like Sven.
Yes. Very good example. Others are channeling ascended masters. Others are channeling angels or God, and God's the other one. So a popular one right now is Jay-Z Knight.
Oh, I've heard of Jay-Z Knight.
Yeah.
It must be very popular if I've heard of her or them. Are they a them or a her?
That's the woman who channels the spirit of Ramtha.
Oh, that's why I'm getting confused. Ramtha is a guy, an ancient man.
Yes,
right?
30,000-year-old man.
Yeah, that's pretty ancient.
And I've checked her out, and she's kind of got this big school that you can kind of go and like tune up your own.
I really want to do that.
Yeah, but so you do things like you blindfold yourself and you shoot an arrow at a...
Oh, not so keen on that idea.
There's
I like the idea of developing my psychic potential.
And I think there are lots of different
but not if
exercises.
It involves archery.
I would love to try that. And then there are other channels like Jane Roberts, who is dead, but she channeled Seth, and that was the Seth books are very popular.
I've heard of Seth as well. Yeah.
And my personal favourite, Esther Hicks for Abraham, which is a group of beings. She just names them Abraham for, I guess, convenience. And I also recently found out about somebody called Joe Clarkson, who channels someone called Emmanuel. And actually Ramdas is a big fan of him.
really?
Yeah, so that was kind of like interesting.
I like Ramdas.
I like Ramdas, but
So the Esther Hicks, the ones that you like,
yes.
How similar or different is she from what we saw Jackie doing?
Very different in that she certainly isn't channeling like your dead grandma. That's like so not what she does. The way it's done is, I mean, they've got a few books, but you would ask a question just about like, it's a lot to do with manifestation. So say if you want something in life, the idea is that she's kind of telling you how to be to attract that thing.
Okay.
And the overall message is, think happy thoughts, don't worry too much, and you create your own reality. So the thing that a lot of these have in common is comfort.
Yeah.
In different ways. And it's like, well, what do you want? What's interesting about Abraham is it's kind of very comforting for people who are a bit more materialistic, and who are just kind of living life. Like, what do you really want on a day-to-day basis? Well, you want to feel good most of the time. And that's all it's trying to do. So that's kind of what I like about it, because I think
there some
as
cachet, like the extra that comes from the fact that it's not just some nice old lady saying comforting stuff to you, but she's channeling some ancient spirit.
Yeah, and it's interesting listening to the older tapings, and I'll show you the difference between an old one where she's kind of speaking like, yes, and this is, it's quite an unnatural voice, whereas now she's speaking just like a nice old lady, you know.
Okay. So she got on the foot in the door with the weird voice, and then just relax and to be herself.
Yeah, and it's really hard. Like, it's very hard to kind of catch them off guard. I'm actually saying them there, which her. But yeah, it's quite convincing, let's say.
Why do you find it convincing?
Convincing because it sounds so wise. It's hard to imagine a person coming up with these answers, and that's the case for a lot of these channels or mediums.
You're just like, the wisdom is so impressive and amazing that any human have thought of that. And
the other thing is so an underlying belief with a lot of them is, so with Abraham, it's this idea that we all have inner beings. So that's the other part. It's not like you just have to go to Esther Hicks. She's encouraging you to speak to your own inner being, and kind of like meditate. She encourages meditation every day to kind of align a bit more with your inner being, and then you can kind of benefit from it too. So what's an inner being then? Isn't an inner being just like... Well, it's like, which is... So the way I see it, you could compare it to what a lot of old religions say is, it's like the Holy Spirit. So it's that part of God that's kind of like here in us. She looks at me as if I should understand. Okay, so maybe that's about it. But have you heard of like the concept of like Brahman and Atman? Yeah. So imagining that like Brahman's the hand, but Atman is the fingers. Yeah. And we've got this little bit, or like, you know, the waves of the ocean. So the wave is in us, but that's part of the ocean. So we have this one consciousness. And so it's not just my inner being, it's everyone's inner being. Yeah, and I feel like they're individual enough that I can't talk to your inner being, but it's basically all the same. It's basically all connected. Whoa, okay. It's both, yeah. I mean... I'm finding this a little bit hard to follow. It's hard because I think a lot of it... I'm finding it easier now because the more I learn about like the Hindu faith and stuff like that, and being able to hold two contrasting ideas together. Yeah. I think that is required for a lot of this. That I find very, very difficult. Oh, yeah. I mean, I like everything in my world of my brain and everything to fit together neatly. This is to support each other and sort of make. I like holding two things in my mind. I mean, that's what people call cognitive dissonance, isn't it? That discomfort when you have two beliefs that contradict each other. Yeah. And for me, if I have two beliefs that contradict myself in my head, it makes me crazy. Like, it's really uncomfortable for me. I think I'm very, very sensitive to cognitive dissonance. So you don't like things being, like black and white, basically? No, thank you. I like one or t'other. This is all based on, it's like, the thing I think of is the yin-yang symbol. It's both and. But that's a bit different. Like, what you're saying is, I mean, like, I don't like something being black or I don't like you holding up a piece of paper and saying this paper is simultaneously a completely black piece of paper and a completely white piece of paper. That is troublesome to me. Yeah. If you hold up a symbol which has both on it, I'm like, fine, of course things can be multicolored. Yeah. But the idea of having one thing that is two mutually exclusive things, that blows my mind. Can't go there. Yeah. Yeah. I think there is a bit of that going on. But yeah, and the other thing is it's hard to disprove these particular mediums because we don't have any information about the entities being channeled. And like I said, with the inner being thing, it's kind of like, I can, and maybe we can try this, but if somebody was to say like, Kat, just like go into your body and I'm going to ask you a question and you're just going to tell me exactly what you hear, I would be able to come up with something that sounds quite insightful, probably. And the belief there is, well, that's not your mind speaking. That is your inner being speaking.
Yeah.
So by saying something insightful, you're channeling your inner being. But then here's why I kind of believe that. Because there have been times where I've gone into a state of flow in speaking, which is rare for an introvert, but I have done it. And I don't remember what I've said. And the person who I was speaking to was like, that was really clever. And I think that feels like what Esther Hicks is probably experiencing.
Yeah, it could well be.
And what is that? What is that? Is that something else? Is that just part of the mind? Like, what is that?
Yeah, well, I'd say, I mean, I know exactly that feeling. And I certainly have it, especially when I'm doing artsy stuff. Like an idea will just pop into my head. I'm like, whoa, that's
your inner being.
That's amazing. Like, where did that come from? But I just think because we have absolutely nothing, no evidence to suggest that there is some secret, separate part of me deep down, even though it doesn't feel to me like my own thoughts, I assume it must be, because my presumption going into this whole thought experiment is that I have a brain and that's where thoughts happen, and that is me. I'm basically my brain, and anything that is generated within my brain comes from my brain. If someone's saying this comes from outside your brain, I'd be like, that's an interesting idea, but where's your evidence?
Exactly.
Because I have evidence of my brain, and I have evidence that it generates thoughts, and I have evidence that's connected to everything else in my body. So that's the approach I take, because I have all this stuff nailed down. I could, if I wanted to, well, I don't know if I could, I could just march into a hospital and say, put me in an MRI, and I could look at my own brain. I know that's there. And so that's my starting point. So if someone says, actually, this is not coming from your brain, this is coming from the dead, or from a supernatural plane, or from some mysterious collective unconscious or inner being, I'd be like, cool idea, but where's your evidence?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's a choice. It literally is, you can choose your beliefs. So if I was to start hearing voices like a schizophrenic would, what am I going to think those voices come from? Am I going to be rational enough to be like, oh, well, I'm just schizophrenic. I don't really know too much about it, but like, I assume it would feel very mysterious because you don't feel like you're in charge of your thoughts like we normally do. Yeah. It's unusual. So like, and from taking like various like psychedelic drugs, I'm still in the mindset that that's probably, because I've seen directly that I've taken these things, that's probably the drugs having an effect. And even if it feels like I'm having something else speaking to me and that I'm tapping into something else, just because it's unusual doesn't make it so. Yeah. At the same time, I can't write it off, basically.
It's so funny because we just did a VR experience where we walked out, you go up in a lift and then you walk out on this plank, and it's like several stories up, like 12 stories up, and you just see the city below you, and you have to walk out onto the plank, and you know it's not real, but it feels so real. And it's almost like your body, some other part of your brain overrides the knowledge that you're just in a room standing on a piece of wood that's like a couple of centimeters off the floor, because you can see everything. You can see the street down below you. You can see all these billboards around you. It feels so real.
Even though it's like a bit pixelated, even though you can't see your feet, like it's still close enough that our brains have a really hard time of it.
So that idea that you, like, your brain can trick you. You can feel like, this isn't my idea. Yeah. This is a spirit talking to me. This is something, like, our brains trick us all the time.
They do.
And it's so convincing.
Yes.
It's amazing how convincing it is. So just saying it felt like it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Or like you said previously, this feels like wisdom that's too amazing. It can't have come from a human being. I mean, obviously we don't completely disregard our feelings, but we know how wrong they can get.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think what it comes down to for me is, and this applies to the Jackie thing as well, what would you prefer to believe? And that's how I think I'm choosing to live my life now. It's kind of like, what belief makes me happier on a day-to-day basis? What generally makes me act like a better person?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these beliefs are actually helpful for that.
Yeah, so is it then a belief, or is it just like a lucky charm almost? Something that
you
you're
can call it
carrying
what you
around.
want, but I
Yeah.
actually put all of my beliefs in the same bucket
Yeah.
because I think they're all chosen.
Okay, all that said, that this makes you so happy and everything, and
Yeah.
is the most important thing in your life. Shall we try and do a little experiment
Let's.
to ruin your world?
Okay.
I don't know if this will work because obviously I am not a psychic, but I have done a little bit of research about how the people who aren't really psychic but pretend to be do this. So I'm going to try and basically do a reading of someone that I've never met before. That Kat has a photo of them. Obviously, in real life, you'd have the actual person, which might make a difference. But
Yeah, because you need to read her energy.
Yes, exactly. It's hard to read energy through a computer screen. But Kat knows this person, so she'll know more or less if I'm right or not. So she's going to show me the picture now, and I'll see if I can pick up on any energies.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. And remember, I'm seeing this through a glass darkly. All the energies of this person are coming all the way through the internet, through Kat's laptop, which is not my laptop, so it's all infused with her energies. That'll probably get it mixed up a bit.
Yep.
So, don't tell me who I'm looking at.
No,
But
I'll describe
who
what
I'm
she
looking
looks
at.
like. So, a white woman. She has got kind of almost like a bowl haircut, brown hair. She's not smiling, quite a neutral face, wearing a kind of mustard-coloured pants and jacket without sleeves, and a navy top with beads. And what kind of shoes is she wearing? Kind of, I don't know what you call
Sandally
those.
type.
Sandally type
Wrap
shoes.
shoes. They're quite nice, actually.
Yeah, I really like the outfit. I did comment on it when I saw her. And the building's just quite a neutral building, so I don't think that's giving away too much.
Okay, the first thing I'm getting from this person is that she spends quite a lot of time caring for others. Does that make sense?
No.
No?
No. Okay, I mean, that would be mean for me to say that that's not the case. I wouldn't say caring for others is main.
But maybe she spends more time worrying about others, or caring less in, like, not physical caring necessarily, but what I'm saying is emotionally. She's quite tuned in to other people, and she does concern herself with other people's problems.
She does do a lot of reading about like psychology and of other people.
What more caring about people than psychology? Yes, this makes sense to me. So her area of concern is people because she cares about them. That's her focus. But she's not super sciencey. I feel like there's an unconventional sort of creative spirit that is coming through.
Well, it's interesting because she wouldn't normally call herself creative, but she does come to my creative meetup and does try to cultivate her creativity.
Oh, well, maybe that's partly it, because you know her through the creative meetup. Maybe that's why the word creative is coming to me. And also maybe that's something that she's trying to develop more in herself.
I'd say so.
And I feel like when she was younger, maybe she did have more of a creative thing, and perhaps because of the responsibilities of her life, she's dampened it down a bit as she's got older, and it's something she'd like to reconnect with.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
I'm also getting this feeling that she's at this stage in her life where she's this is kind of a negative thing to say, but I don't mean in a negative way. It's like she's made a lot of choices that have led her to a certain point, and she's in a moment of like questioning.
Yes.
Like, what direction do I really want to go in? Is this the life? Is this my life? Like that classic like Fight Club thing, looking out at all your IKEA furniture going, is this my life? Is this all there is?
That seems to be accurate. We've had lots of discussions about that recently.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the direction she needs to keep pushing that. She just needs to keep that's where she will develop and grow like into the beautiful soul that she's meant to be. If she stays trapped within the sort of construct that she's built, then I actually see quite a kind of not sad but very conventional, not fulfilling future for her.
Yeah.
But if she pursues that creative thing, I see that pulling all sorts of things towards her. And one of the things I see it pulling towards her is perhaps a love interest, like someone who really ignites her in a way that she hasn't been before.
Oh, interesting.
Is that making sense?
I think she'd quite like to hear that, actually.
Yeah, is she single at the moment?
She is currently.
Yeah, that makes sense, of course. So these are the energies of the universe are sort of conspiring to give her these two options. One is she stays in the route she's in. The other one is she keeps pulling the thread, as they say, to see what this creative thing will bring into her and bring to her externally in the world. And the other thing, I see it manifesting more physically, because previously it's just like ideas that she's playing with, but I see her actually making something with her hands. And I don't think that's necessarily, she's not an artist, is she? No, but I see something arty happening. Okay. I don't know exactly what it is. It could be something that you wouldn't necessarily think, like crochet.
Okay.
I feel like something fabric. Okay. Like some kind of design or fabric maybe, or maybe she
does like small detailed work.
Oh, this makes sense. So maybe cross stitch. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know anything about the world of sewing, but I know that's, and I think again that ties back in to when she was young. There was something there. Maybe. Oh, yes. That's why this is where this is all coming from, because there is an older woman who passed, who is in spirit.
Okay.
And she had an interest in so she had an interest in like you say, small detailed work, and it could have been knitting or crocheting. I don't know the details, but I can hear that clack and that sound of like fabric, like an older woman sitting there wearing fabric, and I sense that the person here probably saw that and wasn't necessarily involved, but it was like around her.
Well, she did used to talk a lot about her grandma in Moscow. So
interesting. Yes. So that's exactly it. Yes. It's an older woman. She's heavy set, as you would say. And she is sitting there doing something very, it's not arty. That's the thing. It's not arty. And I feel like this person will take it in an arty direction maybe. But the thing that the grandmother was doing was very practical. She was fixing, she was mending. She didn't think of it as art. Wow. But there was a detail with it and a beauty with it and a commitment to what she was doing that made it artistic and beautiful. And I can see her, and I can see her smiling down on this person. And she now knows, because maybe in life she wouldn't have given this advice. She would have probably said, do something very practical, make sure you're safe, make sure you're secure. Those are all the sort of messages that she would have said when she was here. But now she's in spirit and she sees the broader sense of things. Mm-hmm. She's saying, yes, of course, make sure you're well fed. And that was always a thing for her. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like she was a feeder, like one of those people who would make sure that the kid, every kid who came through her house, she'd like make sure they had a decent meal in them. So she wants to make sure she's fed. Yeah. But beyond that, she's saying, you have to try. That's what she's saying. You have to try, darling. Because I don't know, it's not, obviously, this is coming through my British mouth. She's probably speaking in Russian. But I hear things in English because I'm a clairaudience. Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's what I hear. So I feel like she's saying, make sure you're fed. But after that, you have to live your truth and you have to live your passion and you have to keep pushing forward. And this person, the grandmother, I feel like she was ready to go when she went, but she hadn't, because she hadn't seen the world from the distance she now knows. She probably didn't tell her this in life. Right. So that's why she's so powerfully coming through right now.
She needs to get this message.
She needs to get this message to her. Make sure you're fed, but pursue your passion. Nice. And that's what she wants her to know. So, and know that this too shall pass. Yeah.
I'll let her know.
Yeah. And of course she blows a kiss. So that's like, so that's it. I got a good sense of the reason why I knew what she is like is because the grandmother was there with me telling me that stuff. Yeah. And we got a couple of hits there. I knew profession. Yeah. I knew what area she worked in. I knew her general personality. What else? A few other bits and bobs. And then I knew about the grandmother. And I had that message for her. So do you think that's a sort of satisfactory? Do you think the person would walk away feeling satisfied?
I think she would be very happy to know that. And but genuinely, okay, so not everything was a total hit, but I would say that there were certain things about because we have had these conversations about being more creative, and it'll be interesting to see what she says.
Maybe you can play that to her, but I wouldn't want her to think I was actually psychic.
I would. So, how can we book a reading with you, Rebecca?
So this is the first. No, that's not true. I did want to test one for my friend the other day with the same thing with a photo to see if I could get a vague sense. Yeah. This is the first time I've tried it. Jackie has done this a million times.
Yes, exactly.
And this is working from a photo, not the real person. Also, I prefaced it by saying I'm not psychic. I'm a skeptic. So there's a lot of things up against me and giving a convincing reading.
It's true. But what I liked was me just hearing it, I was kind of still rooting for you. I was still thinking I want to hear the things that are going to connect with this person. That is what your brain is doing. It's scanning for the things that you can pick out. I also think your approach was almost more helpful than Jackie's in a way, because you were talking about like interests and things that genuinely interest people now. Oh, I think that was it, because Jackie was just channeling dead people, whereas you were also...
Jackie did give a few details about the person, I think. Well, Jackie kept it broad, so she was like, I sense there's someone who likes music. Is there anyone who likes music? And then it might be the person in spirit, or it might be the person here, depending on what people say.
Oh, that's true. She was very less like advice focused, whereas I think your reading would have actually, if I was to choose, you know, I think that would have been like a more helpful reading for somebody to hear.
Well, maybe. I mean, who knows?
So I basically think you've got a talent for this. And,
yeah, so I watched a couple of... I went to a cold reading workshop about 5 years ago with this psychologist who focuses on the psychology of deception called Ray Hyman. But this was quite a long time ago, and I don't really remember any of the details. But it's not actually the workshop I went to, but he has recorded his workshop and put it online. So if anyone's interested in learning to do what I just did, I'll put it in the show notes. It's a workshop by this guy called Ray Hyman.
I don't think we should be arming people with these powers. And I will say that just because you can fake it doesn't make the possibility that other people can do it untrue.
This is the thing. So... But now you know that people can fake it.
Yes.
That's something to take
really
into account.
To know.
And we know that people do fake it because they've been caught.
Yes.
So now we've got a situation where someone's doing something and they are either faking it consciously or unconsciously, because I do believe that some people could be. They call them shut eyes. So it's basically people doing the same thing that I'm doing, but they've convinced themselves it's real because it's coming from their inner voice.
Yeah. And... I mean, the one bit of science I did kind of get on it was that there has been, radioactive traces going into people's brains. And the idea is that your brain waves do change. In a lot of, like, experienced channelers, they can detect that their brains are doing different things, which makes me think of just about flow state and what we know about different brain states.
I've read that about meditation as well. I mean, you're always going into different brain states all the time.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean you're talking to the dead.
No,
hopefully.
But it's that thing about how convinced they are that they're doing it. And I think that would be good evidence to suggest that there are many people who... The ones who at least think they're genuine. Their brains are probably changing in a different way. Yeah, quite possibly.
I mean, to be honest, your brain changes if you eat chocolate. My brain changed when I started talking, or when I'm not talking, when I'm listening. The idea. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm skeptical of neuroscience, but those are when you see a brain study and they show you, oh look, this part of the brain's lighting up, and this part of the brain's lighting up, and this part of the brain's lighting up. I've spoken to neuroscientists who say basically, the changes are very, very subtle. They make it look more dramatic.
Because the colours.
The colours, yeah. But the changes are really subtle. And often if you read a popular science article, they will sort of exaggerate it to make it more fun and funky for us.
God damn.
I'm not saying there's nothing there. No. I'm not saying there's nothing there. I'm not just going to poo-poo over everything in the world. But... I think that all that stuff is in its infancy, studying that. Sure. And I think to jump to any dramatic conclusions would probably be a bit foolish, at this stage with what we've got. But it's definitely something interesting to watch. Yeah. I'm really interested in the stuff in meditation, particularly because I meditate. So I've got a bias towards believing that's really doing something dramatic in my brain. But who knows? Yeah. You know, who knows? But what the kind of point of doing that experiment was, like I said, to demonstrate that it can be faked, and not just like, you don't have to have an earpiece in. There's a guy, you might have heard of him, Peter Popoff.
No.
Oh my God. So he's an American Christian preacher guy who went around doing those big revivalist meetings, and he would stand up on stage, much bigger audience than what Jackie had, like hundreds of people. And he would pick out a member of the audience, said you, and do what I just did, but more, like you, and you are a doctor and you have a passion for cello and blah, blah, blah. And then he'd do that, which is really impressive. And then he'd also bring people up on stage in wheelchairs and say, okay, I feel the power of Christ, and put his hand on their forehead, and they'd stand up. Like, he was full on. Wow. And the interesting thing about him is the skeptics were like, what the hell's going on here? And they like started looking into it. One of the main skeptics who was looking into it was a guy called James Randi, who I know you've heard of. Yeah, he's like the founder of the modern American skeptics movement. He's a really cool guy. He used to be a magician called the Amazing Randi. And then, as many magicians did, he sort of realized, a lot of what these people are doing and saying that they're doing with supernatural powers, I can do as a magician. So he started getting a bit like suspicious, and he started looking into it. So he starts looking into this Peter Popoff guy. They can't figure out how he's doing it. And then I don't know who came up with this idea, but someone was like, he's wearing like a hearing aid. That's interesting. What's that hearing aid about? And they were trying to figure out why is someone talking to him maybe through the hearing aid? How's that working? So one day they brought along a radio expert to one of his shows, and they tuned the radio to all different frequencies to try and find the frequency that his whatever he was wearing on his ear was, and they found it. And his wife was talking to him, and she was like, I don't know how to do an old American lady accent, but imagine an old American lady accent going, Petey, I hope you can hear me. I've got some information about 20B. And she'd just been listening to the people talk whilst they were waiting in the queue and in the loos, picking up information, telling him where they were sitting.
Oh, that's clever.
Feeding him literally the information.
Okay.
The people in the wheelchairs, that's another really interesting story. What they'd do if someone looked a bit unsteady on their feet, or if they had a crutch, they'd say, why don't you sit down in a wheelchair? It's much more comfortable. And they wheel them up on stage, and he'd use the power of Christ to make them stand up, which is something they could do anyway.
That thing about people just kind of hearing information and then passing it on. I always think about the Ramdas story of like meeting like Neem Kali Baba. And
I don't know this. Tell me.
So Ramdas, I think the previous night, I'm going to butcher the story, but it's something like his mum had recently passed, and it was something to do with her, I want to say pancreas. And he'd had like a dream the night before. Then he goes and meets Maharishi, and he says to Ramdas something like, your mum basically had something wrong with her pancreas. Like it was something dead specific.
Yeah.
And, that was it for Ramdas. It was kind of like, about my dead mum. You know what killed her.
Yeah.
And obviously having an experience like that.
Hearing it back like that.
Yeah, but the only thing, and you say, okay, didn't Ramdas tell the guy he was traveling with about that, and then maybe the guy he's traveling with passed it on? Ramdas claims that didn't happen, that he didn't tell anyone. But I do wonder. I mean, because he'd been traveling with this guy for a long time.
That is a fact that like is out in the world. It's possible to be found out. That's what they called hot reading. So cold reading is when you just go in and do what I just did. You just look at a photo and guess based on context clues, make a few educated guesses and hope for the best, and then twist things to your advantage, like I did when I said caring. The reason I said caring, I actually had this written down on my notes. If the person that Kat shows me is female, say caring, because then you can turn that into she's a mum. Yeah, which is likely for women of a certain age, or perhaps she works in a caring field. I have a list here of the most common careers in the UK, assuming that I was hoping you'd bring me someone from the UK, because that makes it easier.
It's just funny that it so wasn't like that one.
But it's just remembering demographics. And if you worked in that field, you wouldn't need to do it consciously. I'm not saying that Jackie has a list of demographics memorized, but you would know. And the thing that I find really interesting about the pancreas story is the way that people... You don't remember, like we came out of that thing. We came here to talk about this, so we were really trying to pay attention and remember.
But the
details go. Yeah. I wonder whether, like Jackie did, the psychic gestured to the trunk of their body and said, "There's something around this area," and he was like, "Oh yes, there was. It was the pancreas," and he just didn't remember that bit.
It would completely. I would like to maybe we do a show about Maharishi, because there are so many stories of like bizarreness around that.
It's funny how certain people become a magnet for lots of stories
and they get enhanced,
magic and wonderful, and
100%.
Yeah, so
really interesting one.
But the thing about the Peter Popoff thing that's really interesting. So they exposed him and they played the tapes on TV on like one of those late night American shows of him and his wife communicating. So everyone knew that he was a fake. He disappeared for 20 odd years. He's back.
Wow.
Yeah, he came to the UK recently.
Wow.
Now he's doing this thing where you have to send him like £1 in an envelope, and then God will like send you more money in a mysterious godly way.
That's like the most oldest fucking trick in the book.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is the thing, like people really want to believe.
Just to make money. I mean,
and you'd think like people nowadays anyone could Google his name and find out this whole story. There have been there's a Steve Martin film based on this.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a really good film. I can't remember the name. I'll put it in the show
Please
notes.
do.
But it's a fiction, but it's about Peter Popoff. It's based on the story of Peter Popoff, and there's been many stuff written about him. But people want to believe so much, they will disregard all of that.
Especially if somebody is mildly charismatic. And like I was saying, there are certain people who I'm naturally drawn to. I was rooting for Jackie just because of how she came across. Whereas there are other people like Jay-Z Knight, or whatever her name was, less so.
Yeah.
Abraham, Esther Hicks, very much. So I'm like, well, we've all got our tastes. We all have a need to be fulfilled in these characters, and we project all of those hopes and beliefs onto them.
There's a particular sort of experience of sitting in a room of people who will believe and are all like into it. And you're like, there to do that. For you to be the person who sits up and says, no, I think this is bullshit. That's really hard.
Yeah.
In fact, there's been whole psychological studies around conformity in general. You heard of the Solomon Asch line experiment?
Tell me about it.
Okay. So what they did is they got a bunch of people together in a room and they showed them some lines. So they've got 2 cards. On one card is a reference line. On the other card is 3 lines of different lengths, just black lines on white pieces of paper. And they have this experimental subject and 7 confederates, meaning that they're in league with the experimenters. But you walk in and you think you're part of a group of 8 people who are having a look at these lines and answering some questions about them. So the experimenter, the scientist, comes in and asks everyone in turn, which line is longest? Which line matches the line on the other thing? Just simple questions that anyone could answer about the lengths of lines on pieces of paper. But they leave the actual subject till last, so everyone else gives their answers first, and they all give the same wrong answer. And then the person on the end has to choose what to do, and in their head they must be thinking, what the fuck? Like, why are all these people lying?
I must
be
wrong.
So what they found is 1/3 of participants just agreed with what everyone else said. Because it's easier. Because why cause a fuss? Or maybe they started doubting themselves, thinking, maybe I'm wrong. So there's conformity is a massively strong pressure, even in something that has absolutely no emotional weight. Like how long's a piece,
and something that is like evident and clear.
You can literally make people say the wrong answer about lines on a piece of paper just by adding a bit of social pressure.
But what's interesting is whether those people believed what they were saying.
Well, this is what I wondered about the other people sitting there watching Jackie. How many of people are believing and how many people are going along because
that's a very interesting
they feel
one.
like everyone else does?
Yeah, I mean, that is a very interesting one in the sense that they've elected to go to that. It's different. I think a good example is people going to church as a kid. Like, you know, you're forced to go. And you're inclined to believe because why would your parents take you otherwise, right? But I remember hearing a story earlier today on another podcast about some guy's niece, I think like an 11-year-old niece. He asked her, do you believe in Santa? And she said, no, but don't tell my mum and dad. Which is so beautiful.
Oh, I love it.
Isn't it great? And obviously the parents are keeping the belief alive. Like, I love that. And I feel like it's a really good example of how the world is working.
There are people who've been going to the Spiritualist Church since they were very young. There are only 2 Google reviews for the Spiritualist Church. Oh. The other one I can't read it to you. But the guy said he'd been going since he was 14.
Okay.
So, and that's another thing that I thought that's interesting, because from our experience, we're just walking into this room of people and there's Jackie there and no one knows anyone. But actually there's a steady stream of the same people coming through this church. Maybe talking to the same dead people every time they come. I mean, how many dead relatives do you have?
Yeah, good point.
So the idea that Jackie might have been there before, quite possible.
Yeah, they don't have them come. They've got like quite a big schedule of different mediums, but that is
perhaps Jackie is a member of the congregation.
Also, and she's local.
Yeah, so the idea that she's coming in completely cold and just meeting these people for the first time and knowing incredible things, that's not what's happening. She's coming in knowing something about the people there and giving vague statements, which people pick up on because they really want to.
That's a good point.
So this Jackie may be completely believing what she's doing. And I think that's actually a really interesting state. And I think it's kind of... because I remember reading tarot. So I guess I do have some experience with reading, because I used to read tarot cards back in my more credulous days. And I thought that I was genuinely getting messages from the cards. And I think part of that was because, kind of like what you were saying with Esther Hicks, I thought this is too insightful. It can't come from me. This must come from the cards. It's almost like a lack of self-esteem. Like maybe Jackie should just step up and say, hey, I'm a really nice person who has some good advice for young people. and people in my community, and I'm going to just say it.
Yeah, why do we have to hear it from the dead?
Because they need to demonstrate that the soul transcends the body, because that's their religion. That's why. But
the reason they're doing that is because it's comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, harms, benefits?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because like you say, it is giving people comfort.
Yeah.
I think, is it good to believe things because they give you comfort?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So, for example, if I had two identical handbags, imagine I'm that sort of woman who would have two identical handbags, and I'm going out for a stroll around like downtown LA or somewhere dangerous. I don't know what downtown LA is, like some dangerous streets, right? I have one bottle of mace. I put it in one of the handbags. I don't know which. I don't have time to check. I just grab a handbag. I'm walking along the street with the handbag over my shoulder. It's comforting to think this is the handbag that has the mace in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know either way. Is it good for me to believe that the mace is in the handbag? Will it affect my behaviour, perhaps?
Actually, this is dumb because no analogy will really work because it is an analogy. They're always imperfect. I would actually say that's fine because it will affect your behaviour, making you appear more confident, making you less likely to be a victim.
Interesting, yeah.
Only in that analogy, and I'm sure there are analogies where this is not the case.
Is it a good metric to use to say what
comfort?
To believe things are true because they're comforting. Is that a good metric?
I think it depends what you're believing, and I think this one in particular. So yeah, I shouldn't say that as a blanket statement, but I think this one in particular, believing that there could be life after death, that you can contact your dead relatives and that they generally say nice things, seems to be unharmful.
So you think like you don't have to have the same system for reaching all your beliefs?
No.
There are some which are different.
Yeah.
How do you decide which ones are the different ones that need a different level of evidence or a different level of...
Every case is different, but usually it's something to do with, what am I going to believe this random mushroom in a field is? Am I going to be skeptical about whether that's going to kill me or not? Am I going to believe that mushrooms can
It's very
kill me?
comforting to believe that this mushroom is delicious and that I can eat it right now.
And, if you have an experience with psychedelic mushrooms and you're like, oh, I love mushrooms, they're good for me and they're really good, and you eat a lot of them, and then you think, this won't kill me. Like, obviously, that's like a dangerous belief. So if anything comes to your own mortality, then it's time to be... then maybe to apply the skeptical approach.
It's funny that you bring up mortality, because what could be more linked to your mortality than believing in life after death?
Well, there's the other thing to consider is like your aims. Like, just because I believe in life after death doesn't mean I want to leave this earth. Because say another one of their beliefs, if you're going to go down the Abraham Hicks route, is we're here to kind of enjoy our time here. We're not here to just pass on to the other side.
But can you see a way in which believing that you transcend your mortal coil and carry on living, that you'd never die, that death isn't real, would affect the way you behave in real life?
This is why things like karma are helpful, right? Because you tack that onto a religion, then at least it makes you behave yourself when you're here.
So there are people like I can't remember what they're called, but that UFO cult who all committed suicide when Hal Bob came past.
Yeah,
and they didn't commit suicide. That's not what they thought they were doing.
No.
They thought they were going to the other side because they believed in life after death.
So then there are other values, and I would say that as a case-by-case basis, what happened there isn't a tragedy, because all of those people probably did die happy, thinking that...
it was kind of a tragedy for their friends and family.
And that's the thing. So what are you valuing when you choose these things? And when your beliefs, and they always will, they often will outweigh your impact on the people around you, because I think humans are innately selfish.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with you there. Oh, it might be the one thing I'm not skeptical about. I kind of believe...
I love that conversation, but I think we should have it another day. But I do think that is definitely something to talk about.
But presumably those UFO people... there's an amazing podcast series all about that cult, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's really, really good, and I can't remember what they're called right now. But presumably their beliefs gave them comfort.
Yeah.
So were they wrong to believe those things?
No.
They were right to believe those things, even though it ended
experience. That was their
suicide.
choice, their life. Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a problem with that.
But do you think it was true because they believed it?
No.
Okay.
No, but it was true for them. And like, this is my other thing about like people's individual experiences. I don't think you can say it's right or wrong. And And yeah, you could say, well, they have caused harm because they've harmed their loved ones. So that is inherently wrong. But I think it's also that thing about intentions. Like, they didn't intend to do more harm to their family than good that they're doing to themselves. It's really
it's confusing because
difficult.
we're kind of talking about two things at once.
Yeah.
We're talking about whether believing something makes it true.
Yeah.
Whether you should believe things that are empirically true. And we're giving truth two sort of definitions, aren't we? Because I'm talking, when I say true, I mean, this is a table I've got my hands on. That's true.
So there is that kind of objective truth, and I do struggle with that a bit because I think that that's almost irrelevant in some case. I would say it's almost irrelevant. I would say the more important truth is the individual truth, the subjective truth.
But the objective truth is what tells you important things like the cliff ends here, don't take another step.
Yeah, and this is the other thing. So every case is different.
So I think that like my main thought about the harms is I don't think it's a good idea to get into the habit of believing things just because they're comforting. I think that's a really bad track to go down. I don't want to be reaching for my mace and it's not there because I didn't check because I believed it was there because it was comforting to believe it was there.
Yes, I just think that there are so many different cases, and sometimes we can't know for sure. When you can't know for sure, then I'm going to go with the comforting belief.
Well, I think when you can't know for sure, just say I don't know.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Why do you have to, because that's what I think. I mean, I'm not saying I don't think there's life after death. I'm saying I don't know. In the absence of evidence, I don't know. Then
I think, but you have to choose a way to act.
That's true.
And I think if you're, at some point, there are going to be times where your beliefs are going to affect your actions. And that's when it's like, even if you don't know, you have to pick a side. Which one are you going to choose?
Do you have to pick a side though? Like, are you forced to say, if you genuinely don't know about something, at what point are you forced to pick a side?
When it comes to acting.
Like, can you give me an example? Sorry to be tricksy.
You're at a crossroads and you have to get to your destination.
And you don't know. You literally don't know which way. Yeah. Then you just choose one at random.
That's it.
Yeah.
And random. There's random, and then there's I'm going to choose the one where I see a butterfly because I'm probably going to have a slightly
may as well.
I mean, again, it's really hard because every case is different. This is my problem with this whole thing.
So that's one of my thoughts about the harms. Like, I get where you're coming from, but I'm not convinced that comfort is a good reason to believe stuff.
It's like if you had a checklist, there would be other things on my checklist as well, I'm sure. But I think with this case, with life after death, if something gives somebody comfort and something gives somebody fear, then fucking choose comfort. I would tell that to my mum who believes in, heaven and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's the thing about like myself, like, do I believe in hell? No, because that's uncomforting, discomforting.
But that guy, Peter Popoff, he made a lot of money out of women like your mum.
Yeah, so
because they believe something.
This is a totally other issue, and this is when I say that
I don't think it is a completely different issue. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't think it is completely different because one of the things about believing things on insufficient evidence is it leaves you open to exploitation.
Right.
Which happens a lot.
Yeah, and how much is somebody going to pay for comfort?
This is why skeptics hate psychics. This is why we call them grief vampires, because they are literally making money out of people's grief. Yeah. And they're bringing these people again and again. And like if you've ever talked to a grief counselor, they go through years and years of training to deal with a very delicate process of working people through the stages of grief. We're not even sure how it works, really. It's a complex thing. It's complex human psychology. And someone just coming in there with nothing other than a hunch that they can have a go at this and making a lot of money. And people like Peter Popoff and Sylvia Brown, people like that did make a lot of money. Jackie's not in this category. Yeah. But because you're believing in something because it's comforting, you are vulnerable to being exploited by these people who will take that belief and just wring you out. Like, there are people who've lost their life savings or made really unwise choices because they've been told something by their dead grandma. Yeah,
my only thing that I'll tack onto this, because I am, now I'm genuinely playing devil's advocate because I don't really believe this. But what if...
So you admit they're the devil.
This person... This person who spent all their life savings but dies happy thinking that whatever they've paid them. I mean, like my mum giving money to the church every year.
Yeah.
That used to drive me mad until I thought, if this is giving her comfort, then even if it's illogical and actually contributing to something that I don't believe in, like tithing and stuff like that, if that brings them more joy than it's causing them like lack, it's like mum can afford the amount she's giving. It's not like her life savings, but where is the it's a fine line, isn't it? Between...
Yeah, for sure. And there are some people who just go away feeling better, and that's fine. But I think like one of the things that people say, like the grief, people who work with grief say, is that it's really important to go through that process of letting go of the person. So even if you're not being financially exploited, there's this thing where you keep meeting your dead grandma every week when you go to church and getting another little crumb of contact with her that actually might slow down your grieving process and not allow you to let go, and might end up you feeling terrible. I mean, this is all just, I don't know anything about the process of grief, so this is all just supposition. But you can imagine this situation where someone just kept coming back to the psychic, kept giving more money to the psychic, just desperate for that little bit of contact with their person that they loved so, so much. And not only are they giving money to someone who is tricking them, consciously or unconsciously tricking them, but also they're not having that space to get over their grief and reconnect with the people that they love in the real living world. It's kind of like this tragic story that could play out. That
is interesting. And there's like anecdote, a friend's dad sadly passed recently, and I remember her saying, I feel, she was kind of going through the grieving process, but also saying, I'm a bit worried because he didn't have very many friends who are dead. So will he be in heaven now lonely?
Oh.
And that just hit me so hard, because I just thought, really that's sad. The saddest thing. Like, you don't normally think of, I mean, the picture that was painted of heaven for me was, you'll, no matter what's there, you'll feel like really bloody good. That's the point of it. But she was kind of seeing it as kind of like literally the cloud land where you meet your other dead relatives, and it was like, no, he's going to be sad there.
That's really sad.
Yeah, so these beliefs aren't always comforting.
Yeah, and they might seem comforting, and that's why you adopt them, or maybe for whatever reason you're driven to adopt them, partly because of comfort,
and then they start to backfire.
And then maybe they backfire in a sort of psychological way where you're scarred forever because of this thing, or maybe in a more practical way in that you get duped by some horrible charlatan, grief vampire type. The other thing, and this is just really subjective, and I think it'll be different for every person, but I have people I love who have died, and I don't want my last memory of them to be talking through Jackie, through this like woman in a stuffy church, tottering around in high heels, suggesting that they might have been an alcoholic. Like, that's not my last memory of my grandma or like any of the other people I've loved that have passed on into spirit. I don't want that memory to be like polluted by like the last time I saw them and I said goodbye and it was me and them and we had a connection, whatever it was. That was my last moment. I don't want that overlaid with another layer of like, and then they pop back to tell me to look in the drawer where there's an old photo.
See, that is very interesting. That is like subjective Rebecca taste, because I would say, if I was to imagine, I'm just thinking of a particular person and I believed Jackie, I wouldn't care about who was channeling. I would be like, that's cool that I got to connect with them.
Yeah.
So that is just a taste thing. And I can see where you're coming from, because it's kind of like maybe your idea of mediums has painted that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm just a bit neutral about them, then I'm going to see them as literally a channel.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't matter. It could be some skeezy like guy on the subway, and why am I saying subway? The underground. Who is channeling my dead friend.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It shouldn't matter because I care about contacting my dead friend.
I guess that's true. If they presented, and this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you, how confident are you? No, let's start from when we were at the bus stop. We just immediately left Jackie's seance or whatever it was. How confident did you feel that what she was doing was real?
Jackie just went into,
like on a 0 to 100%.
So like, say if I've got a big bucket of my woo-woo beliefs, which are all a bit mixed up and I haven't sorted them out properly, with like Abraham Hicks kind of stuff at the top, and what will be at the bottom? I don't know what will be at the bottom right now.
Aliens.
Let's say aliens. Yeah, really good, because like that's possible. I guess Jackie was on the scale. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't out of the question.
You had some percentage of confidence that what she was doing was
wasn't
real.
At the very top. It wasn't.
So you put it like 50%?
Yeah, let's say that.
Okay. And how did, like, that was when you left her? Yeah,
she was in the category of, no, let's say 50% of is where I'm at with like everything.
Yeah.
Before I know anything, before I investigate something, she went over that.
Oh, that's interesting. So you approach every idea with a sort of 50%
It's more
confidence
like 50-50.
that it's real.
Wait, yeah, it's not like everything starts with 0 and then
Is this because I'm forcing you to put it on a scale?
No, but this is actually a really helpful way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, that's that feels right.
And what would you say your confidence in that Jackie spoke to the dead is right now? It was 50% when you left the seance. What is it now?
Oh, no, it was above 50% when I left the seance, and now it's dropped back down to 50%, which is where I started.
What's your confidence that I just spoke to your friend's dead grandma?
Or like 0%, because you're not claiming to. So that's like a good example of the scale. So I think 0%.
Okay,
yeah.
That's interesting. Good. So what would it take to take you up to 100%? She's definitely talking to the dead.
That she channels one of my dead relatives.
And what would they have to say? It wouldn't be like,
So this is
you have a grandparent with red hair. That's kind of easy.
Literally, I only really know one dead person, and she would have to be very specific. It would be like, I'm getting a letter S, and he liked dubstep and stuff. I'd be like, oh man, that's Sam. Like, yeah. So I would.
So it couldn't just be, he was a musical person. It would have to be the specific type of music.
That would be the 100%. I think music. That would make it like 80.
Everyone likes music.
Yeah.
I didn't once meet
That's
a guy.
really good one to use.
Yeah, I should put that down on my list. I met a guy once in a cafe who claimed not to like music. I was just trying to make conversation, and he was like, "No, both my parents are musicians. I hate music, all music."
Aww.
And I was like, "Whoa, okay."
Nice.
So some people don't like music, but I think he's in the tiniest minority. Yeah. If I said to anyone, "Oh, I'm getting a sense of this person, they liked music," I think probably 99% of people would say that is true. Yeah. So there would have to be something super specific.
I guess so. Yeah.
So there's a Harry Houdini.
Yeah.
He was like fascinated, another magician turned skeptic, or turned kind of skeptic, because he really wanted to believe. So he left, when he died, he left his wife with like a code phrase to say, because and then she spent 9 years going to every medium to try and contact her dead husband. Oh. People still do it. People still do Houdini seances. I think they do it on the anniversary of his death, maybe, or maybe it's his birthday,
to try and get
and contact him.
Yeah.
But now we know what the word is, so that it's not blinded anymore. But for 9 years, she was just going. No one else knew this phrase apart from him and her, just waiting to get it, and they never did. Lots of other people have done this too. There was a really famous one. I think it was maybe a Swedish guy. I found a news report about it. Same thing. Like, he left a specific word that only he and one other person knew. And then that person, after they died, went around to all the mediums to try and get that specific. So getting a specific seems like pretty impossible. Getting vagaries that feel very specific to you, that's very possible.
But then there's the other thing of like, what is the thing that if something does exist after death, how limited would they be? Because it's not like they would be all powerful. Because if they were, they'd be doing crazier things. But to believe that we some kind of consciousness dissolves it into the ether and some kind of essence can come through somebody, it's actually less likely for me to then tack on, but they can be really specific and they understand English really well, and and they have all these memories. Maybe they wouldn't even have proper memories. They would have. It would all
so it's not like Jackie's talking to an actual person. She's just getting a sort of sense,
an imprint of it. Yeah.
Okay.
In the same way that there are a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but this idea that in the same way that our genes pass down certain traits, and there's that whole like past lives thing, and this is why you can have a lot of people saying that they claim to be Cleopatra, is because it's not like this soul or whatever is so static. It's then they aren't moving, they aren't as limited as we are.
Interesting.
So it all kind of gets dissolved into, like, I'm imagining like little sparkles in the air. And so some stuff kind of gets passed on and goes through, like an imprint, like the geese thing about the imprint of mothers.
I'm looking at you like you're crazy.
Never mind. Yeah, that one's a bit weird, but it's this idea that, you know, geese know what to do to their mums. Like, all animals know certain things.
Yeah, like instinct,
all of that stuff. So what if some stuff could be passed on through this kind of soul-like thing, and that's also the thing that kind of gets thrown out into the ether, and that's also the kind of thing that we can some people can tap into.
How would you prove that?
Because we're all energy. I don't know, and that's like a really half-baked, quarter-baked theory that is just coming out there. But it's just different ways. But do you see how easy it is to come up with like a theory?
Oh yeah. I come up with them all the time.
I'm like yeah.
So I just said one more thing on the whole, like the scale of believing Jackie. What would it? We talked about what would take you up to 100. What would take you down to 0? Would she have to just come up to you and say, by the way, that was all bullshit?
It would have to come out of her mouth saying it was bullshit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Otherwise, you're
still at 50%.
You're still at 50%.
50.
Interesting. Okay. So I don't know. We were talking about harms and benefits. The benefits are basically comfort. The harms are my concern about believing in things for comfort.
I'd say money.
And and
unreasonable.
Money. Yeah. It is crazy. There's a great website, well, a very depressing website actually. I might have mentioned it before on this podcast, called What's the Harm? What'stheharm.net.
Yeah.
And they have a list of people who've been exploited. It's not just financial exploitation either. There was this psychic, I mentioned her before, Sylvia Brown, who she would like come on TV and tell people things about ongoing police investigations. So there was a missing girl, for example. I'll probably get all the details wrong, but this girl had been missing. She was like a 12-year-old girl who'd gone missing, and Sylvia Brown was called on to say what she thought had happened. She was like, I sense that she's been taken to a Japanese sex slavery ring.
Wow.
That's what she told her family. Seriously, that's what she came up with. And the family went away believing that for a couple of years until the girl was discovered dead, I think. But that's, to be able to come into someone's life and tell them something.
That actually probably make them more miserable.
Yeah. I mean, it could make them more miserable. It could make them feel better. You can literally say anything because the people are there believing in it for whatever reason, maybe because it gives them comfort, but who knows? They come there believing it. The power that you have as a psychic to just be able to say anything you like, no matter how, and hopefully most of them are like Jackie and just say vague, comforting things, but some of them don't. Sylvia Brown is one who was famous for saying really quite nasty things about how people died. And generally, I don't know what her deal was. Maybe she thought it was more believable if she didn't tell people nice things.
Yeah.
Or maybe she genuinely looked inside and she thought that she was for real. But I really doubt it, because as I said before, the more money they make, the less legit they tend to be. And she was making a lot of money.
Yeah. So, closing statements? Would you? Yeah. So you don't think people should do it, basically, on the whole, or do you?
I don't think. I don't think people should go. I think it's an interesting experience to see how it's done. I don't think. I mean, this is only £3 and it was your £3, so I don't mind so much. But it does make me feel bad thinking that there might be people who caused emotional distress.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to go putting money into the hands of people who are causing emotional distress, even if they're doing by accident. And my general objection to, funding stuff that I think isn't true. In that kind of the same way I don't like the idea of going even, and this is a very extreme point of view, and I don't think it's necessarily right, it's just my feeling, but I don't feel comfortable going and sitting down in a Catholic church because I think about my friends who I love who have been treated really badly by the Catholic Church, and I just don't want to put another bum on their seats. Yeah. So I kind of feel the same way about these mediums. Like, I don't want to contribute to making them more money or making them seem more popular or anything, because I think what they're up to generally is not good and sometimes is downright malicious.
Fair enough. I think
sorry to be such a hard ass.
I think our particular case, I don't think Jackie is harmful. I think I wouldn't necessarily recommend it either, because unless you are a believer, you probably won't get much out of it. I think this whole thing is, what I've taken away from it all is, you need to take responsibility for your beliefs, which means, if you are going to choose to believe in mediumship, you need to be fucking careful. Don't go spending a load of money on a medium if you can't afford to. But on the whole, there are too many uncertainties for me to be able to come down on one side about all these channelers and people channeling things. I think if somebody is getting something insightful from asking questions to their inner beings, whether that is themselves or something else, I don't really care. If it's getting wise, sage advice that makes them feel good and makes them a better person, which it often does, then I think that's fine. But like I said, you have to be responsible for your beliefs.
That's a good note to end on, although I do think we should have a conversation about this idea of choosing your beliefs, which is,
oh my god, massive.
That's a real brain fuck for me. I can't even imagine how you. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is, I'm not coming down on one side. I'm not saying we definitely don't exist after death. I'm just saying I don't know.
Yeah.
And in the absence of evidence, I'm going to go with what science shows us, which is
Right.
we are our brains. When our brains stop working, we disappear.
I would question science.
Woo!
Okay, so yeah, okay.
Boom!
We'll talk about science another day.
So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Seeker and the Skeptic. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know with a tweet or an email. We'd love to hear about your experiences.
Yes, please tell us what we got wrong. You can email us at hello@seekerandskeptic.com and follow us on Twitter @SeekerSkeptic.
You'll find the show notes for this and every episode at seekerandskeptic.com.
And you can find my skeptically themed comics at RebeccaOnPaper.com or follow me on Twitter @RebeccaOnPaper.
And I'm at Yogis Who Shave on Twitter, and you can find me bringing secular yoga to the masses at yogiswhoshave.com.
If you like what you heard and fancy supporting the show and spreading the word, we'd really appreciate a rating and review in the Apple Podcast Store.
Or tell somebody you know about the show.
Thanks for listening.
Bye!